Good afternoon to this panel session 2 of day 1, which is all about deployment conundrum of digital transformation, new rules of the game. In the last hour and so, in the first panel, we heard some very good perspectives about the entire holistic approach and strategy around this digital transformation. And this session is more, if I can say, on the ground, actual deployment of those strategies. We have a very eminent panel who are going to make a few presentations also and share their experiences, learnings, success stories about all these deployment-related dilemma or major issues that we often face in our day-to-day life, especially when the rules of the game are changing so fast that we don't know sometimes which game we are playing. So from, if I can use the word, from the cricket to baseball, sometimes there is no demarcation lines here now. So
hi, good afternoon. I'm back.
Before, things like how do we break some of the organizational and technical silos when we get into actual deployment of our strategies? How do we deal with this very issue of business case, which is the new demand is that it has to be defined in very different units, probably of months and never in years. So the CFOs are not convinced if when you give them a longer term return on the investment that you are seeking. They want in line, in the year, sometimes in the quarter, what impact are you going to bring through these transformations? So to address many such issues, we have to be absolutely nimble, agile, and everything. So for those of you who don't know us, so I'll take a 1 minute of introduction. My name is Anand Maheshwari. I am going to be the moderator of this session. And I've been in the shared services space for the last almost 25 years, I would say. And joining me on the panel today are some eminent professionals of this field whose wisdom we can leverage upon, and feel free to post your questions to them, either by name or in general, and they will be happy to answer those. So you all know all the rules of the game already. So I would say one line each about each of my colleagues here. You have their detailed introduction already circulated. So we have Nalin Tripathi. Nalin is waving to everyone. Nalin has joined all the way from Dubai. He has spent about 25 years in the business. We have Samir Madan, who is from Agilent, Director of Finance of Agilent Technologies. And Samir always brings, I have watched him bringing new perspectives whenever he participates in any such conversation. And above all, we also have Ramit Gupta. Ramit is a partner and leading cognitive solution practice for the giant service provider called IBM. And we will certainly be very much interested in what Ramit has up his sleeves for sharing with all of us. So since we already started a bit late, the previous session went over by 5 minutes, and I took a couple of minutes to be able to shift or change over. So without further ado, can I request Nalin to please kickstart the proceedings through your presentation? May I also request the host backend to please put up Nalin's presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope I'm audible, everyone.
Yes, you are.
Excellent. Good afternoon, everyone. I think, and stay safe, I think, with you and your families. Delighted to be here. I think thanks to you, Anand, and Rakesh and Pallavi and the Shared Success Forum for organizing this. It's very vital that we stay connected. Ideally, we would have wanted to do a physical face-to-face session, but this is the reality of new life, and this is what all of us are going through. And I put some perspective as to what the world is, after this, pandemic, and how we're reacting and how we read things going forward. So if we can put up my page, I had a few thoughts, and the biggest thing, and this is the theme of the session, is largely on technology and digital. And I want to start with on a lighter note. And let's say, if I were to ask everybody to predict, which is the longest standing marriage, which humanity will ever see, any guesses? I think, to my mind, the business and technology, matrimony will be the longest one. And with that context, I think I see that, my view is, the way, technology has, embedded itself in every function, every operation of the business over the last 3-4 decades. And also now with the COVID crisis, I think there'll be only one industry, which is, digital. If there is any industry which does not have a digital operations or a fulfillment, I think it'll have a very short-lived life. So with that, background, let me start. Let me share my screen. One second. Everybody, they will see my screen now. Is the screen visible? Hello? I hope my screen is visible to everyone.
Yes, it is.
Okay, super. Okay, let me start. So what, I'll take a few minutes, and I know the quota is about 8-9 minutes, and try to cover some of the perspectives as to how the world has evolved, especially post the, COVID crisis, and how, technology and digital is the only future which I see going forward for all the functions, operations, businesses we operate in. And the title of the slide I've kept is, context is the only challenger today. Now imagine everything was going fine, the world was perfect, and then this invisible virus comes in and creates havoc across the planet. Everything, gets into shutdown mode. So what has changed? Nothing was, nothing which is man-made or artificial, or this thing which impacted the context. It's just the invisible virus. So context for everybody has changed, and context then becomes the real challenger for all of us to adapt. What are our choices? We just have two choices. Either we lead, take this challenge as an opportunity, or be led and perish. So these are the only two choices, to my mind, coming out of this crisis. And I'm going to talk about some of these 8-9 trends and shifts as we get into the new game of digital and reacting to a less disruptive world going forward for whatever business and industry we operate in. The first being, the real ask, and if you talk to the board and senior management, is, how can we have a model, business model, which is disruption agnostic? And, idea is, how do we ensure sustainability? That's the other word to call disruption agnostic, is sustainability in terms of the products and services, so that we continue to dominate the market. If I were to look at, Jack Welch's philosophy, it's largely, in whichever product or service industry you are, there are two things you got to do. One is, are you dominating the marketplace? And if so, are you doing it profitably? That mantra really stays on, but how do we, get ahead of the game in this changed context, where the context itself is a new challenge to us and all pervasive. So be disruption agnostic, that's the key. And an example I would take here is really the capitalization, let's say, for the largest, productivity company, software company, product company, which is Microsoft, which has taken best use of this opportunity. Today, the entire business world, which was working on a work from home mode, has been enabled through technology like Microsoft Teams. All of us have been so glued and to Microsoft Teams over the last 3-4 months, delivering whatever we are expected to do anywhere in the planet. So I think how do we, and this company really saw that opportunity, and nobody knew Teams, it was not too exhaustive in terms of utilization across businesses still about, a year back. But in just, last 3, 4, 5 months, it has just, grown exponentially. So, if we continue to reinvent and, look at, how do we get disruption agnostic as a key theme for whatever business model we run, I think that's going to be, the story going forward. The second key takeaway from my experience and how I read things right now is, all of us would have, understood about, we've heard last decade, 2 decades about blue sky thinking. My view now is changing to how can we have a blind spot thinking enabled into that blue sky thinking. You're planning for something new, something big. Yes, it's an opportunity, you do blue sky thinking. But if you're trying to solve for some challenge, we basically need to develop a blind spot thinking, which is largely your invisible competition. What is visible? The typical competitor landscape, which we have read through decades, does not apply today. There are a lot of invisible competition in technology, and look at travel industry. A virus comes in and screws up the entire hospitality and travel industry, aviation industry. So are there blind spots around in the industry space which we need to be aware of? And this is a key factor becoming more and more prominent as we build business plans and business models in future. So blind spot thinking is also key ingredient now as we strategize for businesses going forward. And technology obviously will become very, very key here. The third theme I see coming out now is how do we repurpose? And let me take an example of blind spot thinking. And sorry, I missed that. Was in the FMCG sector. If you look at India, we had Levert and P&G doing the FMCG dominating the business. But a player like Patanjali comes in and starts shaking up things in the marketplace of FMCG, and nobody was aware that something like that, which is a business model based on traditional Indian medicinal herbs, can actually give them a run for the money. So I think these are some of the blind spots which we need to be aware of as we strive evolve in a more competitive and dynamic, challenging context ahead. Repurpose your value chain. I think yes, we need to think end to end, but also we need to think top down. I mean, the new model for survival really is a physical model, which to my mind is a combination of the physical as well as digital delivery and fulfillment model of any business service. If we don't have a physical model today, I mean, it doesn't work. So for example, the success of Amazon or Flipkart, all the online retailers is combination of the physical and digital model. A lot of catching up has to be done by the traditional retailers, like Walmart, Big Bazaar. But these guys who are purely a digital player in the retail value chain have really made the most of these prices clear. So there is a lot to learn in terms of repurposing the entire value chain of how we operate and do customer fulfillment. Store virtualization is a new concept. You don't need to really walk into physically any story of your liking of your brand. Actually, you can do it remotely with store virtualization. You can actually pick and select and order online, seeing what's there in the store. So these are some of the new trends coming up in the marketplace, and we need to be really, really watchful. And this is going to change things dramatically in the future. The fourth theme I'm looking at, and this is the one I like most, and this is the key, for future, where we've all heard over the last 2-3 decades, it's coming of the information age, and this is really the true information age we are living in right now, and we are thankful that we are there, part of this history. So information, to my mind, is the new currency. This is really the store of value. And today, if you look at amount of value which is being generated in terms of analytics, big data, it's all based on information. Now imagine if I have a supplier and I have information about that supplier, which gives 90-day credit term to my competitor and gives me 30-day payment term. I know exactly how this information is valuable to me. So this value power of the information is really going to be thought-provoking, and how do we really tap this value of information in any business we operate in is going to be key for success in future. So information really is the new currency. The fifth is, now we've all been taught over the last 2-3 decades that end of the day we're all chasing excellence. But as I see things now, and what the top management and leadership and industry leaders are looking at, excellence to my mind now is just an ingredient. It's just an input. It's just a vital input. It's no longer an outcome. So excellence has to be there. It's a given. I mean, it's not a differentiator. It has to be there as an ingredient in whatever value you or business model you're on. So make everything, best in class. That has to be wow. That has to be magic in terms of customer experience, when we talk excellence. Yes, last 2-3 decades, excellence was the outcome, but no longer. It's just a key ingredient to have. Everybody has this. Everybody has the same access to technology, leadership, talent, so excellence is at par, and real outcome is the magic. And what I'm seeing now shift, 2-3 decades, we've talked a lot about KPIs, key performance indicator. Now, the new word I'm looking at is, and this is something I've been developing over the last 6 months, is key success indicator. Now, what's the difference between performance indicator and success? The performance, typically we've been used to, you'll have seen the charts, red, green, amber. Performance has two sides to it. It can be good or bad. But success is always good. Now, the impatience of the leadership of the board and the management is, that, I just want success. As a promoter, as a wealth creator, I have invested money, to make success. I'm not here for an outcome which has a chance of failure. I don't want that outcome. Now, with that in mind, I think the real focus for us is to look at how we design business models, processes, decision strategies, so that success is the only outcome. There's no other performance which is bad or poor compared to where we start from. So that's the new thing I'm thinking now is getting more and more relevance. Fifth key theme, and this is not just because of COVID. This is more because of how the markets are changing. Growth. Now, definition of growth in terms of quantum has changed completely. If you look at, if I were, running a shared services kind of environment or any operations environment, I would look at, percentages. How much productivity can you give year on year, 7%, 8%, 10%, 15%. But the management is really fatigued with those percentage growths. They are shifting from percentage growth to 2x, 3x value impact. Now, that's a given now, and most of you would have seen this trend shaping up, that nobody is, having patience for a 10, 15, 20%, improvement or growth in sales, or they want 2x, 3x, double X, growth, and, and that's the new trend catching up. So how do we design this? A ton of design thinking required to scale up to this thought process. How do we, move from an incremental, mindset to a transformational mindset? That's what it means, and in terms of everything. And just to give an example of this, now, if you look at all the digital assets which have been created in the last 10, 15 years, and I'm talking obviously about Google, Apple, Facebook, Amazon, if the market cap is aggregated for these 5, 6, top companies, the $1 trillion value they've created in the last 10, 15 years is far exceeding the GDP of India. And we have taken about 70 years or longer to reach there. So in the 10, 15 years, the assets which have been created are far valuable than, let's say, the GDP of our country, so to say. It's just a comparative, but, that's the reality, how digital is going to change the value proposition of whatever and wherever we operate in. So that's very, very significant trend. Now, the other thing, and I had a chat with Rakesh about it, was to variabilize the cost. Nobody, so, companies which had high fixed costs during the COVID period have been hurt the most. Companies which had maximum variable costs were probably floating or, about to not too deep into the water. So as long as, we can have models, I think business models where we have variabilized, 60, 70, 80% of our cost structure, I think that's the right and sweet spot to be in future. And that's one key learning, which is very, very vital for a superior operating leverage, for businesses to survive, and be disruption agnostic. The eighth point is really around the choice explosion, and everywhere, anything you want today, there are umpteen number of choices. There are substitutes. If you want to travel, there is Uber, you can drive, you can take public transport. There's so many choices, and this explosion is there, and this is real. So there is no way you can get into a state where you have near dominance or near monopoly kind of situation in any business model.
Nalin, I'm sorry to interrupt, but you need to move a little faster. We have to be conscious of that.
In a minute, and then the last point is really the more preventive and proactive is what the world is looking at. They don't want any corrective, reactive, mindset anymore. So in terms of customer interfaces or personalization, these are the themes which are coming up. So I think this is really the background. I thought I'll also share a structure in terms of how do we diagnose the conundrum, which is a topic which Rakesh shared. And this is how I think. So over to you, I think, and the rest of the panel members should pitch in. Anand.
No, you have given some, if I can say, these 9 mantras are really very, very powerful. And you have packed so much into one single slide about this whole conundrum. It can be really simplified a lot. The trouble with these mantras is that how do you really implement them without making a few mistakes here and there. So it's actually practitioner. You have to practice it, and then only you learn as you go on the way. So we'll come back to you, Nalin, in a short while. You can, sort of keep your other slides in reserve. And I would request Ramit to just share his perspectives about this. Thank you.
Hey, hi, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for making time and inviting me over. I'll just try and share my screen if it's workable. Please let me know once you're able to see it.
Yes.
Okay, super. So thank you very much, Anand. It's always a pleasure to be part of Shared Services Forum. And there's always so much one can, see and learn here as we go through these conversations. So very quickly, I am Ramit Gupta. There's a BPO arm in IBM which is called Cognitive Process Services. I lead that for India market, and hence some of this conversation is very close to our mind. And the fact that COVID has intensified a lot of things is quite amazing. We keep joking and discussing that COVID has been probably the biggest digital enabler which one could find in a while. So I'll share some more thoughts and really get down to brass tacks around how we typically see these things. So that's what I'll be trying to do here. So at a high level, right? I mean, if you look at for us at IBM, we are at the cusp of what we call as technology and operations. So that's what we really do, and there are, and I completely agree with Nalin, right? I mean, the marriage which you talked about, I think it's almost part of our DNA, where we always look at business and tech, so closely intertwined. It's almost inseparable, and the intensity, if I would, right? I mean, unlike many other marriages, I mean, in this, the marriage is actually becoming more stronger with each passing day and passing year, right? So the way we see things is, so this is the future which you're trying to paint, and I'll just belabor that very, very quickly. The concept which we have here is the good old days, right? When you used to go to any organization, how was the work done? Work moved from desk to desk, right? So there was paper which was moving from one person, somebody will do something on it, and it will move to somebody else and stuff like that. Now what is happening is, in the tomorrow scenario, or today's scenario, actually, in many of our clients, we are doing that. Work is automatically happening without any human, right? So there are various trigger points, and you can define your trigger points as your business organization, right? Which is what we call as a workflow, right? So there's a starting point, there's a trigger which triggers that workflow, and then from there it moves automatically, right? And that workflow is leveraging your data, which you see in dark blue. So it's sitting on your data, and then it's consuming various exponential technologies, which is AI, machine learning based, whether you call it analytics, you call it IoT, you call it artificial intelligence, you call it blockchain, and maybe 5G tomorrow. So there are a lot of things which are coming together. So all work is anyway happening, okay? The challenge is about how much work is happening automatically, right? And is it starting at 10%, going up to 60%, etc. So that's really, the workflow. Humans and what we call as the digitally augmented teams are basically the pool of expertise which are sitting on the top, and they are guiding the system to do its job, rather than the other way around, right? Where you are guiding the system. Now, so that's what we are now talking about as the tomorrow scenario. So humans are guiding the systems rather than anything else. And that's the future of work, which is very critical. Now you bring that to life by three ingredients, right? One is having intelligent workflows. Start looking at your organization as an end-to-end platform, right? And second is about having the right, exponential technologies. And that's the beauty. And I think Nalin, you talked about it. I really liked your charts earlier because you set the context so well. There's all about designing for the future and ensuring that you don't have those blind spots in general. So having exponential technologies that you can plug in and plug out in case you need to have a new algorithm, right? And you're all sorted. And most importantly, which is getting more important nowadays, is about the smarter operations. How are you carrying the skill and the people around you to be able to drive that value? Let me talk about very quickly, a very simple, boring process, if you would, right? Since eternity, we have been passing bills, right? And more so in the finance of shared services in general. Now, this is the future, right? And we can keep debating that, there are various stages in that process and from source to pay. And for each of that process, what you see as white color, what you see as purple color, and what you see as dark blue color, right? Now, each of this activity right now may be done 60% manually, 70% manually, which is what is the white color, right? Tomorrow, I don't think so we can dispute that. We can still debate whether going forward that white will go down to 20% or 30%. That's debatable. But I don't think so we'll debate that it's supposed to go down, which is pure manual work, okay, which is very strategic in nature. Then there is a lot of work which is dark blue, which is completely automated, rule-based, or AI machine learning based automation. And what is the purple color is what we call as augmented processing, okay? Where a person like me who gets the right knowledge and the alerts from the system so that I can do my job better, right? So I'm being augmented as a digital worker to be able to do my job better, right? So that's the point of view which we have been creating. And I'm sure, Anand, you'll appreciate that IBM has been challenging ourselves quite a bit, right? So considering that we are in the BPO business, if we take a viewpoint like that, we're challenging ourselves in a way. But considering this future, to the point about digital conundrum and how do we take some of these forward, we have been able to, create a lot of these assets. So a lot of these things which you're talking about is not about, just design, right? We have a vision in mind. And we have various MVPs in mind, or we have already launched it. We are enabling far more, right? So as every day we are passing by, we are inventing ourselves, creating more algorithms to make this intelligent workflow much more richer. So likewise, you have a simple process, right? You have digitizing the invoices, extracting data, validating the invoices. What is critical is your microservices-based rule engine in between, which is number 4, right? And you could choose to define your logic, and you may have maybe 5 more depending on your business case. And then you push it into the system and you do that. Okay, so this is live, right? And this has been happening. I can deploy it in a client environment in 2 months flat, right? So this is not being testing on you at all. Now, an example. So what is the intelligent workflow which I talked about? Second element was the exponential technologies. We already have a lot of these assets, which are analytical models, AI machine learning based. These are pluggable, right? So all I need is access to your data. I'll plug it in and I'll plug it out, give you the output which you need. The intent with which we are approaching things, to the point, Anand, which you mentioned earlier, people don't have the patience right now, right? They need to see value on the table 2 quarters down. How do I do that, right? I bring this in very quickly and bring about that change for clients. The third thing, which is far more and probably the most important, right? Technology never scares us. It's about the phobia and the acceptance of technology which people tend to have, right? Sometimes there is a sense of resistance. So how do we manage our operations better? Now, the morale of people is difficult to maintain, right? And you don't get to see them. You see their initials in Microsoft Teams, or you see them on WebEx, right? You don't even see them. So how do you do your operation? How do you have your daily stand-up calls? How do you run your agiles, your things? how do you ensure that people are doing work from home, but there's no data security issues in general. So that's one part which we are still reinventing, we're still learning. We are realizing that working from home actually not only saves cost for real estate, etc., but we are finding that it's helping in attrition because people love to work from where they are, right? Of course, you do have challenges that there are, they don't have a working table and stuff like that. So we are solving for that. Second most important, what is changing is the consumption-based operations. Now, I talked about that entire workflow, right? So if you have a workflow, it very clearly tells you what is the true cost of an operation. So I can actually convert that into per journal which you're posting, for example, right? And the third aspect is the entire new models, right? Work anywhere, what we call as work beyond borders, and contactless transitions, etc., etc. So I just wanted to give you a very quick snapshot of how we are thinking it. None of this is actually live, okay? And I can show you a lot of these demos. And that's how we show to a client or any conversation which we do in terms of how we can truly create value for you, okay? And there are a lot of examples where we have taken it forward. So in the interest of time, I thought I'll just brush through very, very quickly around our point of view, and happy to take any conversations and comments as we go forward.
Sure. Sure, Ramit, we'll certainly come back to you. You have given an absolutely fantastic overview of how you are actually becoming cognitive even in simple AP processes and taking it to the level of spend analytics and everything else. And your Adapt platform, I made a note of that. So we'll come back to you. And I would request all the panelists to also look at the Q&A box on your screens. A few questions have been marked by name. I mean, Nalin, there is a question for you. And some questions you may choose to answer on your own, even if that has not been marked to you by name. And we will come back, if time permitting, to take some questions orally also. But before I do that, I must go on to Samir Madan. So Samir, we would like to hear about your experiences from Agilent perspective.
Okay. First of all, thank you for having me, Anand and Nalin and Ramit. You've made my job easier by setting a beautiful context. So what I will do is I will share a small PPT which I put together. And see, digitization is a given. In fact, I would say that it's pivot or perish. I mean, if you're not following digitization, then ultimately you will perish. Now, how do we make sure that the humongous data which the businesses stroke the operating environment generates, we are able to use it to our advantage? And who better than us finance folks to interpret that data? And one of the things which is coming out as the changing operating model is pay for use. Folks do not want to invest in capital assets. I mean, they just want pay as you use or pay for use. So my slides are going to talk about the changing business environment, all the data which we get from various formats, zillions and zillions of terabytes of data, and how we can actually catch that data and help our sales guys sell. Because at the end of the day, if there's no revenue, there's no business activity. So, to begin, I'll say that the core role of a finance professional has completely changed from doing the beanbag counter or accounting and what have you. I mean, volumes have been written about ERPs and, multiple other artificial intelligence-based, programs which will give you a lot of insights. But those insights have to then be correlated with the business environment, the general market trends. And the market trends which we see are that, Capex sensitivity is hugely an issue. Businesses are coming up a dime a dozen every day, and not everybody has a lot of capital to invest. So they do have, restraints on how much capital they can invest. The whole market is moving towards servitization and anything as you use. It's kind of linked to the previous thing, but they want an end-to-end solution. They don't want to buy a machine or a box separately and then the service separately and the consumables separately. and whatever else goes along with that separately, including the beautiful insights. So they want an end-to-end solution, and they want to pay only as they use. And anything and everything should be available to them. Thirdly, the market trends which indicate is that product and technology becomes obsolete so fast. Neither is the customer willing to invest too much, and even from the provider perspective, they want to bring new products, but then the older products also have a market. You can refurbish it and sell it. So there are a lot of avenues available for you to phase out your older products and then sell your newer products. Again, pay as you use, to make it lighter for the consumer. And it's a chicken and egg story, but I believe that it's beneficial both for the customer as well as the business provider. And lastly, everybody would like to match the cost and revenue. Nobody would like to invest too much before they start seeing revenues, and even costs, if they can be aligned more or less in the same period as we get revenue, the better it is. It's a fiercely competitive world. It's a fast changing digital world. And unless we appreciate what digital technologies are doing to the overall operating environment of the market trends, we'll be pretty much out of business. New models will come in. We want predictability of revenues, not wait like cycles as we speak today. People will not invest in capital expenditure. So if you can convert everything as to pay as you use is something which will be beneficial. I move on to some examples of pay as you use. The first example from a non-digital world, which I will give. Years ago, when everything was Xerox and photocopy, nobody wanted to invest in a photocopy, but initially you had to buy that whole machine. But as competition grew, Xerox started just placing the photocopier onto your office, and they had a small non-digital counter where they started charging you, for every time you did a photocopy and every time you needed a toner, and they would come and replace it. So that was the best example which came to mind from a pay as you use. And the other thing which comes to my mind, which is a beautiful example of digital as well as pay as you use, is the entire stock market trading. And not too long back, you had people shouting in the well of the stock market, all the rates and stuff like that. Digitization came in, and everything was available online. But again, you had to invest a lot. Nowadays, you have technologies and companies giving you trading at pretty much free. All the so-called leaders like, HDFC and ICICIs of the world, and now face a problem because people have come up with business models where you don't pay anything for a cash and carry, only for futures and options you pay. So the whole non-investment and making it more pay as you use is the order of the day. Operating leases, insurance only for a certain time, because earlier insurance you had to buy for a minimum year. Entertainment, you remember all those days where you had cassettes and CDs and VCRs. Now everything is digitized, but you also have to make sure that you make that subscription only for a period which the customer wants. Nobody wants to take a Netflix subscription necessarily for the entire year. They want it for a month, 2 months, 1 week. Same with Amazon price. So digital and pay as you use is the way out. The industry which I represent, which is life sciences, biotechnology, and healthcare, we moved on to the pay per test model a long time back. Nobody wants to, again, invest in that diagnostic machine. They just want to have that machine available on some kind of a lease stroke rent, and then, pay us as they use. And, on the next slide, I'll talk about the huge benefits, both for us and as well as our customers. And lastly, the whole move to the cloud. 10 years from now, I don't think, anybody will be having a doubt that cloud is the only way out. Some of the specialist softwares will not be available for you on your premises. You'll have to go on the cloud to be able to access it. You will get free technological upgrades and what have you. So this is basically my theme, that digital and pay as you use or pay for use are very, very interlinked. And the only way forward is to embrace them real quickly, but at the same time, keep evolving your own business model. So I'll move on to my next slides, where I'll quickly talk about the value or the benefits for the business, which is making sure that they offer pay as you use for their end customers. The first one was, incremental market penetration, extending your services to products well beyond your core market, as well as cross-selling. It's very, very intellect. In today's world, selling is very, very difficult. It's cutthroat competition. And, your ability to go to tier 3, tier 4, tier 5 cities will all be successful if you have a a pay-as-you-use model. Customer retention is really, really tough as they expand. If you have something like a pay-as-you-use, will be hugely beneficial. Customer satisfaction increases, your entire stickiness with the customer increases, your service guys goes there, looks at what's the touch and feel, how many employees are there, are they adding employees, he comes back, gives his insights to your R&D guy, to your engineers, they start changing the products. Predictability of your consumable stroke services. So that's a very, very important thing. In today's world, I want to have minimum inventory, just-in-time inventory. So if I have a pay-as-you-use model, and I can see how much is my customer using it, what is his, usage pattern, I can, start sending him consumables, stroke services, something as simple as a test kit or some kind of a, slide on which they put in the sample. All those will help me, if I have a pay-as-you-use model where I can predict and carry minimum inventory. Data which it generates, use it to your advantage, and compare that data with multiple customers. How's one doing? How's the other doing? Is the most, latest product more in demand? Can I take away a few aspects of the product and price it cheaper? So all that is something which you get as data and use it. And I would say lastly that, sure, the products, as we introduce new ones, the old one get dated, but there is a huge demand for refurbished stroke renewed products. You can sell it on eBay, you can sell it on Amazon, everything sells for a price. As you introduce new and latest technology, new and latest products, there is a parallel industry which you have to kind of sell refurbished products. So those are a few things which are in the business to kind of make sure that they use more and more pay-as-you-use and generate top line and increase bottom line, reduce their working capital by having minimum inventory, easier cash flows and stuff like that. There are a few challenges for sure. Of course, earnings will drop in the near term because earlier if you were selling the entire machine or a product, you will realize the revenue quicker. But again, that will have lumps and peaks and valleys. This will ensure, a more even curve. The main barrier for development of innovative price models, because people will then want a newer model, latest technology at a much cheaper cost because they have a benchmark of the previous pay-as-you-use. But you can work around that. Nobody replaces all of their machines together at one go. And again, to kind of be able to service those machines on the pay-as-you-use model is not an easy job. So you need to invest in trained manpower who can turn it around a lot quicker, carry all the learnings. As I said, when you go there and look at the customer's lab or the environment. So those are things that you should use to your advantage. Value for customers, I think we've talked about it. Cash, pay as you use, manage risk because they don't have to invest too much. Getting stuck with out-of-date equipment, that's something which is very, very important. And some of the challenges are, there are costs which could go up for them because, they may have to have more number of machines, and there are some costs which are, for the frequent use periods. And not necessarily the total cost of ownership becomes less expensive. But again, if you do a cost-benefit analysis of, how things are in terms of end-to-end, it doesn't come out to be a bad deal because there's cost of capital which you have to take into account.
Yes, very true. So I'll hold you there, Samir, in the interest of time.
Sure.
And in the earlier panel, we had done an audience poll, and I'm sure the results are available at the back end. So why don't we share those? So the poll was for enterprises to take a holistic approach to automation. Which one option from below, according to you, is key to unlock the real value of automation? And the maximum votes seem to have gone to defining an effective, intelligent automation strategy linked to business focus and priorities. Obviously, no single right answer or wrong answer here, but that's what the majority seems to choose. So be it. And then there are closely, somebody says, establishing a realistic business case and visualizing and establishing the handoff and linkage of human and technology for a complete solution, which is really very, very important. So excellent. With that, okay, so we have heard some absolutely fantastic presentations by all the three panelists. There have been certain questions already posted in the Q&A box, a couple of them by name, so you may like to have a look at it. Samir, you have one under your name also just now. And there is one question I have picked up from there, and I would request if Ramit can take a shot at it. How is intelligent workflow different from a dumb or configured workflow?
So workflow is a workflow. I mean, it's a very very good question, really. I mean, I think the question is to try and understand: is there a lot of is there some meat in this, or is just a new marketing buzz around it, right? So a workflow is a workflow. There's no two ways about it. Intelligence, the workflow gets its intelligence largely from two things. One is its ability to be able to self-learn, in terms of be able to help a person like me, if I'm working on that workflow, to be able to take far more mature decisions, because we want to in our principle we want to push down the center of gravity, right? I mean, the moment you do that at an operating level, that's how you get the throughput and efficiency in any organization. So that's number one. Number two is that you have the ability to use a lot of exponential technologies, which are AI, analytics, or being able to use multiple such algorithms as the businesses. So you should be able to codify your business rules, and you should not wait for more than a day to change those rules, right? I mean, it should not be, it has to be done on the fly. And so that's really, as long as you have those traits, by all means, a dumb workflow is as intelligent as it can be.
Thank you. That was a good answer. Anyone wants to add to it, Nalin or Samir?
Yeah, so I mean, and it's a good question on the intelligent and dumb workflow, and we've had experience with this recently with the AP process automation. Now, typically a workflow, in an invoice processing world is, the invoices are sent to the supplier, to the centralized mail room, they get scanned. And if there are exceptions, if there is a PO-based payment, then, three-way match. And there are typical exceptions in invoice processing. Exceptions can happen with three different stakeholders. First is your procurement guys. If they made some issue with the purchase order, there can be issues. Maybe the quantity mentioned in the invoice does not match the PO quantity. Now that creates an exception. You can't book the invoice because there's a mismatch in the PO quantity and the invoice quantity. Now, on intelligent workflow, what we looked at is, can the workflow automatically trigger a communication with the procurement guy for this kind of exception? So that's an intelligent, workflow, which basically triggers a query. You don't need a manual human interface to test because of the quantity mismatch. Some human being needs to intervene and push the transaction as a query back to the PO approver for his, agreement on quantity mismatch. The other stakeholder is your finance. So sometimes, the invoice might not have the GL, cost center, company code information that's missing. So can the workflow really trigger a query back to the finance person rather than any human being redirecting that query to that person? The third is with the invoice itself. So if the invoice has certain tax issue, then can that be sent directly through the workflow to the supplier? Why you need a human being to redirect all these different queries on the purchase to pay process? Can not the intelligent workflow do that? So that's the level of automation which this intelligent workflow can.
Yeah, Anand, if I may add, at the end of the day, the workflow is end to end. Everybody should benefit out of it. It should give you real-time, on-demand data, and a workflow is only intelligent if it serves what it is supposed to. If you give me a workflow and data which is of no use, I mean, it's a dumb workflow.
Beauty is the rules. I think, as Ramit mentioned, the beauty is the rules. I think if you have rules configured, any dumb can be very intelligent in the work.
Wonderful. So I know some people have hard stop coming up. We are already going towards the closure. I have a couple of very rapid fire questions for all of you. The first one is close to my heart. this is about unlearning experiences, because unlearning which is like realizing what has worked in the past need not work now or in the future. So I would like to understand from you, what has been your most significant unlearning experience of the recent past? Anyone? It goes to Ramit.
So let me try and give it a shot, right? So we never realized BPO business can be done work from home. I mean, all our design principles, we always had all our agents working from our offices because of the security concerns. And suddenly, it threw a challenge when COVID-19 hit us like, from nowhere. All our offices, be it Bangalore, Chennai, or Philippines, or Dalian, were suddenly coming into lockdown, and we just could move or work from one location to another. And everybody was coming into lockdown straight away. So BCP just took off, right? I think we were able to, keep the lights on. And we moved 92% of work from office to work from home in a span of 2 weeks. We never knew we could do it.
Yeah.
Right now,
and
suddenly.
I think you said it right. The entire BCP became redundant, and the new BCP was written literally overnight. And it was not written; it was immediately implemented, and then people started defining what. Yeah. So excellent. Anything, Samir, comes on top of your mind?
Yeah, so our experience on working from home was actually quite good because, in every back room or a shared service, you always work from home at least for some time because you have calls all over the day. So it worked out quite well. But unlearning experience for me was everybody assumed that RPA stroke bots are the solution to everything. They're not. RPA and BPA coexist. Make sure that you choose it wisely. Just don't follow the herd mentality and do it just because everybody else is doing it, especially for accounts payable, because every time you get an invoice in a different shape or a form or a size, it'll get stuck. So there are better ways. Pure play digitization is, what your objective is, whether it comes through RPA, stroke BPA, through tweaks, through whatever else. So one size doesn't fit all, and just don't get blinded by what people sell.
Anand.
Yeah, I think interesting discussion and interesting point from Ramit and Samir both on this. And my perspective is we're not limited to the COVID situation and how we reacted to that from BCP, but on longer period of 10 years, what I've looked at automation and digitization is really, the fact that traditionally we've been grown to understand that humans are the best people in terms of the account and finance world, controls are best managed by humans. Nobody else can do that better. That's been turned on its head. Today with the right technology, actually, you can see that the dependency on technology to give you effective controls is far superior than no matter how much you've been trained, how much you've been educated, qualified. But that's the big learning. And an example I keep telling my wife also that, if I go to ATM and I've been doing it for 20 years and I put my card and my wife's pin, it doesn't work. I tried it a million times, it never works. So, the superiority of controls with technology can give you anywhere on the planet. If you swipe that card, it will only accept your PIN. It'll never let you down. Cash transactions which humans do probably can have issues, but the technology-driven processes really. So that's the myth which has been broken, that controls are the domain bastion of humans. I think some of these...
that myth has been broken so much. Yeah. So the last one before we call it a day for day one is about the space that we all come from under shared services forum and whatever. It is widely believed that remote service organizations, whether that is a captive GIC or an outsourced service provider, they are best positioned to become, the staging posts. Or sandboxes to try anything like a comprehensive digital transformation program or something. That is our belief. How much you think this belief is justified or universal?
Yeah, I would not, my mind is, you look at it from a, traditional, wholesaler retailer mindset, if you are certain functional processes in finance, HR, IT, help desk type of activities, it's better than wholesale. you might not make significant value by doing it captive, because these are platform services available, hundreds of players in the market doing it. You might get the most optimal cost per transaction doing it outside. But what is core to your business, those operations stay captive is best on. Having said that, yes, over the last 2 decades, since outsourcing started, labor arbitrage across, developed and developing countries is vanishing. So, really, how do you go forward for the next 20 years? Technology and digital is what the way it is. And, if you can do that right within the capital movement, I think that's the best outcome. You will get 2x, 3x benefits by leveraging right technology in-house. And then you really redirect that talent to do data mining, analytics, information, and that gives far superior competitive advantage to the organization. Instead of those employees being embedded in the routine operations and nuances of the day-to-day operations. So I think that's how if it is a boutique kind of operations, which is very native, very core to your business, do it captive. What is transactional, operational, outsources? There are a lot of wholesale players. Third party we can deliver that at a far cheaper cost. You don't really. These are typically your value enabling and work. These are not value creating work within the organization. So that's how I see it.
Yeah,
So
thank you.
what I will say is that, the shared services model has evolved so much. It's probably time to change the name. Even captives have gone much beyond than what they could ever have imagined. I kind of want to make sure that anybody who joins afresh in Agilent, we run him through a video of our factory so that he can relate to the business, speak with the sales guys to understand what problems do they face, speak with my fulfillment guys, how do they sell the products from one factory to the other to a logistics center. So just understanding the end-to-end business. It's like as an auditor, unless you know what is your cost of manufacture, what are your pain points, you will not be able to audit. And dare I say that, most of it is automated, whether through RPA or a BPA and stuff like that. But these days, shared services centers are really adding value by giving in data intelligence to the business. Like I said, the entire pay for use, the pay per slide model, which we have, we run those models that on average, how much does he kind of order from us? How can we convert that into a pay per test or a pay per slide? How do I analyze the result of my competitor, which is listed, and tell them, hey, we are lagging on this behind and we're doing well on this. So the shared services model has really upped their game. And frankly, I think the only way forward is the numbers which our ERP stroke all the digital formats generate. I have to put a narrative, I have to put a story, and more importantly, I should be able to predict. Many companies, Anand, now do the first pass of their annual budgets through a bot or through some kind of automation.
Yes.
They take the last few years' growth, they look at the growth in that country, the GDP growth, and have a multiple that, okay, if India is growing by 3%, let's say, software will grow by 5x. So they'll take 15%. So the first pass is always done by the system or RP, whatever you want to call it. But again, who gives those inputs? It's people like us, because I am looking at the revenue trend country by country. I'm looking at cash flow country by country. So I think, we have to upgrade our thinking, and we already have. And for those who haven't, they'll have to do it, because cost arbitrage is going to go away. The tax benefit which we get are going to go away. So it's up to us how we upgrade, hire the right talent, make sure people learn and unlearn and relearn. Because, this is a continuous thing. What I learned, I am a veteran. I did my CA in 94. So it's been 26 years. What I learned there, I don't use at all. Accounting, the ERP takes care of it.
Yes.
My job is to predict and, get all the humongous amount of data and make sense of it. So statistical modeling is what is required, not accounting knowledge per se.
I would absolutely endorse that. So you brought in a very important perspective of our being, enterprise-wide view, end-to-end view, and not just a so-called traditional shared services view. We should be looked at more of a value centers for the enterprise than just a service center.
Value center, and we have a seat at the table. See, we always have a seat at the table. The question is, what do you talk at the dinner table?
Yeah, and how do you leverage that table seat? Yeah,
absolutely.
Okay. So on that encouraging and exciting note, thank you very much, Nalin, Samir, and Ramit, who had to leave at a particular point in time. So thank you very much, and thank you, audience, for staying with us all through. And we have then another interesting day coming up tomorrow, so don't forget to log in again at 3 p.m. India time tomorrow. Thank you very much.